The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
Hey everybody, welcome to the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink, and I'm honored today to be joined by Mr. Jacob Sorensen. He is the CIO at Bank of the West. And where are you joining us from today, Jacob?
Today I'm in my kitchen in San Francisco, California. I live in Noe Valley neighborhood.
Perfect. Born and raised you were born in Oakland, California. Did you go to school there as well?
I actually went to high school in Union City, James Logan High School.
And like you said, now live in San Francisco. You're married with two daughters. And I had heard from a couple of the people, you got two beautiful little girls, and they're 9 and 13 years old. So you've got a busy household.
That's right.
Giants fan, Warriors fan, and Las Vegas Raiders fan.
It's happened. You know, I grew up, started a Oakland Raider fan, then became a Los Angeles Raider fan, then an Oakland Raider fan, and now I have to. I can't ditch them now.
I'm actually. This is being recorded right before the Super Bowl. I'm actually. My wife and I are flying out. We're going with the Caesars and El Dorado casino group. We're actually going to the new Raiders Stadium to watch the Super Bowl in the cool Raiders Stadium next week. So. That should be an interesting. They're definitely social distancing. There's only about 200 people going to it, so we got a lot of room to move.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. So Jacob has his bachelor's degree in economics from UC Santa Barbara, and we'll talk about it later, but active volunteer and co-chair for the Leadership Council for an organization called Year Up Bay Area. And really cool organization. And we'll talk about that more later. So my company, IT Avalon, has supported Bank of the West for years. And that's how you and I met. And last time we met face-to-face, which we can't do right now, in your office. That's been a couple years ago. So how are things going with the new normal?
Well, you know, I think like everyone, it's been a challenge. You know, I was used to traveling so much and being able to see the teams and connect with people that way, and so that's been tough. I think early on, as we transitioned to solely working from home, I think that it was maybe a little bit easier. But people have kind of figured out that everyone's home. You know, no one's taking their kid to practice or doing or commuting, and so it's really become a bit of a grind on folks because you know now, especially me, I work for a global organization. So we have team members in India and Paris, New York. So the time zones and when you're able to take calls has just really been a kind of a constant through the day. And it's not just me; it's really all the teams. So that part's been a challenge, and just trying to give people some space. And that's something we're talking about quite a bit about. You know, how do we intentionally create space for people when you're working from home and as other people say, you're you're living at work now.
Yeah, and they say there's a lot of burnout going on with people because you wake up and you know the computer's right there, and there's always a lot of work to do, and you know there's really not a lot of separation between home life and work life. It's just life, and I've talked to a few different people at a leadership level that said it's really something they're looking at right now is to try to deal with that kind of burnout that people are going through, because there's not much to do. It's like you can't go outside and go to a restaurant or do any of that kind of stuff. So, a lot of people throw themselves into work.
That's right. And I miss even now walking to different conference rooms, taking an elevator between meetings, just that mental break, because now it's constant videos all day long, and not time to even do a small context switch.
Yeah, it's a big change, and I mean the last year has been crazy, And what are some of the biggest lessons that you've kind of learned going through this last process of the last year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I mean, definitely learned that we can work this way. It is a challenge, but I don't think we thought we could have thousands and thousands of people working from home, and the organization is not skipping a beat. Even I run a technology organization, and many of our agile development teams, they always felt like they have to be next to each other. They have to be shoulder to shoulder. They want to be around a whiteboard and things like that. And we've actually proven we can be as productive this way. So that's been some of the upside. I do think that me personally, I was traveling a lot before this, and that has been one of the silver linings of being able to eat dinner at home every day and help out with homework and things like that, where I wasn't as much before. And so I do think that as we go back to a new normal, let's say, after the pandemic, that I think there will be less travel in general. There will still be some, but I think people have now seen that we can be effective over videos.
Yeah, big time. Speaking of travel, funny story was you and I were on our way back from Arizona. My wife and I are sitting there, and I look over across the aisle. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Jacob Sorensen. And the fun part was I had just sent you an email about 15 minutes before we got on the plane, and I stopped and said, "Is your name Jacob?" And it was interesting. You actually said that you were on like a whirlwind trip, and that was your last trip, and you were on your way home. So one of my questions is, how many different, just in America, how many different brick and mortar buildings do you have where you have people working in the U.S.? I mean, how many different places do you have under your belt?
So we have a couple in LA. I'm just talking where there's technology teams. So LA, Omaha, Nebraska, we have a big presence. Tempe, which is where I saw you coming back from. The East Bay here, San Ramon, San Francisco. And then if we extend it to, Bank of the West is a part of BNP Paribas. So we have technology offices in Manhattan, New Jersey, and Montreal as well. And I have a role as a deputy CIO for BNPP USA. So that also gets me moving around to those offices too. So it's a lot. And that's just the US. We have a big presence in Paris. So I'm generally going back there a couple times a year. We have an office in Mumbai and an office in Chennai. And so I was making that trip every 6 months. So it's a lot.
Yeah. And with the girls at home, that's got to be a lot of, like you said, it's a silver lining. I've got a 2.5-year-old at home, and this has just been a wonderful time for me to spend at home with him and get to see all those moments that I might have missed, traveling all over the place. So, even though we're going through these tough times for everybody, there's a lot of, good moments that are coming out of it as well. And so you were in the Bay Area. What did your parents do for work?
My parents. That's a good question. So my parents separated when I was two,
Okay.
and so I had the fortune of having four parents, basically. Um, my mother was a homemaker. My stepfather drove 18 wheelers for UPS. My father was, for the most part, a county planner for Alameda County, but he did retire as a kind of a head of the administration group for Alameda County. And then my stepmother, who's actually the only one still working, is has been in marketing her whole career.
What pushed you towards technology?
Yeah, interesting question. Someone who had a big impact on my life was my grandfather, my mom's dad. He was born in Oakland to immigrant parents. He went to Cal. He was a pilot in World War II. He flew B-25s in Asia, and he came back. He became an engineer. He ran his own engineering firm, so he was an entrepreneur. He was an inventor. He did a lot of really cool and interesting things, and so he bought me my first computer when I think I was 12, and the memory was on a cassette tape, and you would. I remember I was trying to build it was some sort of it was a card game or something, and you type this whole thing out, and if you had one syntax error and it didn't tell you where, you had to start all over again.
Good luck.
Yeah. So he was just he had a huge influence on me. He had two daughters and one grandchild, me. So he was like a third dad for me, that's for sure. He lived here in the Bay Area, so I got to see him a lot growing up. And even as an adult, he and I would talk quite a bit.
Sounds like a Renaissance man. Did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, he did do a little bit of everything. He invented, the stud finder
Oh yeah.
in a house. Yeah. He invented some oven for, do you remember, what were those cookies? Otis Spunkmeyer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He invented an oven for them that they could cook more cookies and get the same results.
Wow. That's great. And what was his name?
His name was Jerome Gizdich.
Jerome sounds like a cool guy. You know, you got to have those people in your life. And it's like, I was going to ask, are you an only child?
Yes and no. I have two stepsisters, a stepbrother, and I have a half sister who is 20 years younger than me.
Okay.
So no, I would say no, I'm not. But I did grow up in the house, kind of by myself. So kind of grew up as an only child.
Okay. Yeah, I'm an only child, and there's plenty of attention was given to me, you know. And I've got my wife grew up with four older brothers, and it's just a completely different way of being raised. So you said before, where did you go to high school?
James Logan.
And were you a good student?
I did well. Maybe it's kind of an interesting story for right now. I think growing up when I was much younger, came naturally. So people say, well, you're smart or whatever, and so you did well without really trying. But James Logan was a big school. It's like 4,500 students, and there's a lot of competition. And I was playing baseball at the time as well, so trying to balance being a student and an athlete. And most of my friends were not good students, so I didn't have like good role models there. and after my son, so I did well, but then I was just doing kind of okay, let's say my first 2 years of high school. And I went on a trip with my dad that summer before my junior year. And I think my sophomore year, I got mostly B's. And I went to all these schools that thought I would want to go to, and was looking, going to the admissions offices and thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to get into the school. The B's aren't cutting it. And so that was I had this sort of epiphany. I remember before I started my junior year, and I said, I got to run the table with A's, like, period. There's no other option. I have to run the table with A's. And I did that. And I kind of learned a new way, and I learned that I actually had to work hard at it. It wasn't just going to like happen.
Right.
And so that was huge. Got me into UC Santa Barbara. And I just continued that behavior of really just working hard. I think you realize that you're really not that smart. You just got to put in the work, and that was a huge lesson for me.
I think it's a good point. There's always a bigger fish, there's always somebody smarter, but it's pretty hard to fail if you work your ass off, and one of the questions, just going back, when I was listening to you talk about that, what was kind of the driving force behind you kind of seeing that, if I'm going out and I'm going to get into these schools, I need to change the way I'm living right now, because a lot of kids at that age don't have that kind of vision to see into the future. I need to change something right now. What was kind of the driving force behind that?
I think a lot of things. I mean, both my mom and my dad, they both went to San Jose State. Pretty much the rest of my family, aunts, uncles, both my grandfathers went to Cal. So, being able to see that, and where I grew up, there weren't a lot of people who could say both their parents went to college, or,
right,
let alone their grandfathers. And so that was one thing. I did have a number of other friends who were older, athletes, who went away to school, and it was kind of like, that was something I always aspired to, was to be, to see them go away somewhere. So I definitely wanted to get out of my element that I grew up in, and just see something else. And that was the ticket, was to be able to do that, was to get into a school and go away. Also, nothing against truck drivers, but my stepdad, that was the house I actually grew up in. Seeing him work nights and be a truck driver, and he'd always say, you don't want to do this, so you better have a better plan than I did.
Well, it's nice to have those people in your life who just want better for you, and they also work their butts off to make it better for us. And I mean, that's the same thing that my parents did. It's funny you're saying you went to a school that had 4,500 people. The town I grew up in Illinois had 1,500 people. My graduating class was 36 people. And it's like, it's amazing to look back and see all the different things that had to line up, just for me to be in the position I'm in. And a big part of that is my parents, mostly my mom. But when you were a kid, what did you envision for your life in the future? What did you dream about being when you were growing up?
It's an interesting question. I always felt like I'd be doing something in business. I felt like I'd be doing something. I always had a vision, and I could never really put my thumb on it. And I think it's because what I'm doing today didn't really exist back then, and so I think there was some premonition in there. And so I thought I'd be doing something. building things, something technical, but didn't really know how to articulate it then. I mean, even when I was in college, it was a very interesting time. I was talking to someone about this recently. I went to school between 1990 and 1994 for college, and at the time, the internet was not even really a thing. People had computers, but it wasn't. It just Java hadn't hit, the internet hadn't hit, and so most people were thinking about, well, I'm going to become a lawyer or I'm going to become an investment banker. Like those were the two kind of natural paths for what's next. And you just didn't have this like technical track. And so after I left college, everyone's asking what's next. I didn't have a plan. I really didn't know. And so I actually went to law school for about 9 months. And I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. And but total respect for the the profession, but it was not in my DNA. And so I left law school, and again had no plan. Family was completely kind of devastated, because for them it's so easy to say, oh, he's in law school.
What are you going to do?
And so that was definitely a moment of kind of reckoning. Didn't have any money, had to pay rent, the whole thing, and got a job. Really got a job at a company called Gymboree, which sells kids' clothes, or used to. And just got a break, really. I mean, I got a break, and ultimately ended up working a few levels down from a CIO who took a liking to me and gave me some mentoring and things like that. So that was definitely a huge break for me. Why did I go more that technical route? When I was in college, I was as you said, I was an econ major, but in my last year in college, I took an honors program. It was this research assistant position. And I thought, that sounds interesting. You don't have to write papers. You don't have to take a final. You're just a research assistant, and I get a grade for that. That's awesome. And so I actually did that, and I was really doing graduate level research under a professor, super interesting. And we were studying. So this is kind of early 90s, and immigration was like a big kind of political thing going on. And we were studying whether your ability to speak English had any effect on your labor market outcome. And we were looking at Los Angeles. And so anyways, I had to get my hands dirty with data. And so I had to learn how to build a database. I had to learn how to do really early kind of data science work, statistical programming, and things like that. So really got into that, and I was like, wow, I was just really jazzed about that work. And so, as you know, early part of my career in technology was very focused on data.
Well, that's cool. Who was that person that gave you your first that mentor at Gymboree?
His name is Carver Johnson.
Okay, and it's a common thread within pretty much every business leader I talk to, including myself. There's that one person who just kind of went out, just kind of liked you for some reason, or liked me for some reason, and said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance. I'm not sure it's the right one, but I'm going to take a chance. And then, of course, you got to work your butt off and prove yourself. But it's a common theme in every person I've talked to.
Yeah. I was just, it was that. It was luck as well. I remember I grew up listening to a lot of different music, including jazz. There's a lot of jazz in my household, um, and somehow I think he was playing jazz in his office or something, and I knew who it was, and so he was extremely impressed that this 23-year-old or 24-year-old knew. Um, and one Friday night, he was leaving the office, and he said, "Hey, me and my wife have an extra ticket to see, I think it was uh, one of the Marsalis brothers. Do you want to come?" And I thought, yeah. Right? And so anyways, I got to spend some, kind of quality time with him and his wife as well, which I had no business doing that. I was 2 or 3 levels below him.
Well, it's great for somebody to, take a personal liking. I think I told you before we started the podcast, I just had the drummer from Hall & Oates on here, and he turned me on to the Brecker brothers, who were big in jazz. And, I just went down that wormhole last week while I was getting ready for the podcast. And it's like, there's so many amazing musicians out there. And, just like the Marsalis brothers, and it's just, if you take a second and go down that, there's a lot of crossover within IT. IT nerds are also music nerds. And it's like we all kind of talk that same language, and we're not all talking IT all the time. So you got to have some kind of personal interest in place with those people as well. So one of the things that I saw in your bio is you're a fan, as I am, of Tribe Called Quest. So while I was getting ready for your podcast, I was listening to Tribe Called Quest the whole time. So love me some Q-Tip. How'd you get into Tribe Called Quest?
Well, I think you and I are the same age. So, growing up here in the Bay Area, and 1982, I was 10 years old, and rap and hip hop was that's where that was it. And so breakdancing, the whole thing. And it's always surprising, I think, when people hear that, from me, but that was it. And so that was my music. That was my break, what I identified with, not what my parents were listening to. And into high school, same thing. And so I was really into the music. And so Tribe Called Quest came out, and I heard, I was probably heard Bonita Applebum or something like that, and got the album. And I remember I got the album, got it a little late, but I got it when I was just going to college. And, back then, you're in the dorm, so you have your headphones on all the time. So I was listening to that first album from them, like nonstop.
Oh yeah.
Fell in love. And then, as you said, when you learn about them, you learn about other groups as well. Obviously, De La Soul was really big in high school. But then I actually became a DJ in college for the student radio station. And so that was a great experience, and I got to go really deep there on the music because, back then, and so we're talking 92, 93, what I'd consider the golden age of hip hop.
Yeah.
We'd get all the underground stuff would get sent to us as white label records, from all the different groups. I remember I still have the white label from Wu-Tang Clan, the very first single they put out. And we also got to meet a lot of the artists as well, because we were in Santa Barbara. And so when they'd do a tour, they'd go to LA, of course, and then they'd come to the Bay. And so they'd want to make a stop along the way and, make some money, do a show. And then they'd come on the radio show and do an interview and stuff like that.
Oh my God, that'd be so much fun. Well, one of the questions I had too was you go to UC Santa Barbara. It's got to be tough some days to make it to class. It's so beautiful there.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Some funny stories. I I don't want to bust myself, but they had this thing called AS Notes. I have no idea if they still do this. It's like a service where a graduate student in the class would actually type up notes and publish them. And then so you could pay like $20 for the quarter and just, you'd see the notes. You're like, oh my God, I'd never have written notes that well, or I missed that part. So it was kind of a no-brainer to do it. And then I started going to some of the classes and I'm thinking, why am I even sitting here? The notes, I'm not tracking the lecture. The notes are way better. And so what I ended up doing was I'd go pick up the notes and then just walk to the beach and sit on the beach when during that class time, but just go sit on the beach and study the notes and I'm good.
Yeah. Work smart, not hard. So throughout high school, college, all that kind of stuff, we all have those favorite teachers. Who is your favorite teacher?
Wow. Man, there's a bunch. I think that I really enjoyed that experience I had as the research assistant. That was really cool, working directly for that professor. That was really cool. I think about high school. I actually think about my baseball coach more than anything. That was a great experience. I learned a ton about baseball from him. And became a better player. It's just it was a great experience playing high school baseball.
So are the girls into athletics, softball, or anything?
My oldest is into softball, yeah. So she's been. In fact, they just had a team meeting on Zoom a couple nights ago, and I mean they haven't had a tournament in a year. It's amazing. They had a couple of bootleg practices that eventually got shut down. So it's been hard to even get them out to practice. But hopefully this summer they're planning to do a couple of big trips.
So someone had told me that you implemented the first data warehouse at Bank of the West. So that had to be a huge undertaking.
Yeah. I think, Bank of the West back then, we were really operating more like a community bank. And when I joined, I came from JP Morgan Chase, Washington Mutual, so much bigger organizations. I actually started my financial services career at what I'd like to think of as one of the first fintechs, a company called NextCard. And we were issuing credit cards online. We were also a bank taking CDs online. And this is, 99, 2000 during the dot-com. So I'm only saying that because we were doing very innovative things across the board, including with data. So at Bank of the West, we weren't that savvy, but we were soon to be considered to be a bank that was too big to fail in the U.S. So we had to really get our act together around data. And so that really led to the investment and building out the team. I think we hired, I'm sure you know better than me. I mean, we brought in, we were bringing in 15 resources probably a month over the course of a year and a half just to get our arms around that. But yeah, that was exciting. I'm equally excited about the fact that last year we implemented our first data hub, so a more modern kind of big data ecosystem. So I'm happy to at least play a part in that, or at least that happening. And have much smarter people than me trying to bring that to fruition for the bank. And so I'll be happy when what I started a number of years ago is actually gone and we're only relying on the more modern data hub.
So back when you came on board, was that kind of what they had seeked you out for, was to bring them into the new way of doing business or the new technical way of doing business and kind of getting out of that community bank type
was
feeling?
Definitely, I think, just in general, a part of it. The back then, we're talking 2010 ish. We have to remember we were all coming out of the financial crisis.
Right.
And that financial crisis was a pretty big blow for the Bay Area as it relates to banking jobs. Much of Wells Fargo started to shift to Charlotte in terms of their jobs, or at least out of California, the Bay Area. Washington Mutual was gone. They were a big employer here. And a number of other banks kind of shifted or disappeared. B of A had already, kind of moved to Charlotte. And those were all San Francisco Bay Area based banks at one time.
Right.
And so for a bank like Bank of the West, it was a bit of an opportunity to scoop up some talent that wouldn't, I think, have normally been attracted to Bank of the West. But now Bank of the West was kind of a big player left here in the Bay Area.
That's interesting. So what's the size of your management team? So, I mean, how many managers do you have under you? And then after that, what's the size of your global IT team?
So direct reports to me are about 8. And then, we probably have about 100-ish managers in IT in total. And then if I count the global organization, we're probably 1,400 or 1,500 team members.
Wow. So in going through COVID, how do you deal with a huge workforce like that very quickly switching to a remote workforce?
Yeah, just in general, that experience is definitely a lifetime one. It was, if I think back to this time last year, COVID was already here. I was already going on trips to cities where they had cases. Mm-hmm. And not paranoid, but after seeing what happened in China, me and the team got together. I said, look, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there were a number of people who were saying, this is all hype, let's not get too worked up about this. But, my motto was, let's plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so that's what we did. And we started, just making sure we had the network capacity, making sure we started ordering tons of equipment, because the supply chain was already being disrupted. We were ordering things in triplicate because orders were being canceled or delayed. And then it hit us, and it hit everyone quickly. And then, my team was amazing. They worked nonstop. We were building machines, because think about, we have call centers, we have operations people, we have people who never even dreamed of working from home.
Right.
And so we had to get equipment in their hands that they could then take home and figure out how to connect to their home network and operate. And so over a 3-week period, we got about 8,000 people at home. And so that was a huge accomplishment. But if we go beyond that, it was really just, it's still not easy. It's trying to connect with people. We do a town hall with everyone in IT once a month. So that's an opportunity to bring everyone together, hear the same messages, hear from different people from across the organization. I tried to get and do skip level sessions or go to different, leadership groups or teams or other smaller all hands and just be present. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a big part of it, and just try to be helpful. I check in on people. I'm blessed to be here with 3 other people. Some people are at home alone. Some people are celebrating birthdays alone, right? So it's just being mindful.
Yeah. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is in a bank, in a financial services company, everything has to stay secure. So you have to move everything remote and then keep everything secure at the same time. There's so many different moving parts. And one of the guys was on the podcast. He's with Corey with Schwab, and he's in one of the heads of cybersecurity. And they had to move like 5,000 people in India to work in remote who had never worked remote before. And he said, what an undertaking that was. And it's just going through all the different moving parts that you folks have to go through. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, that India was once, like literally once we got everyone settled here, back to prepare for the worst, hope for the best, we shifted to preparing for India, not knowing what was going to happen, and doing a bunch of testing, trying new technologies out that would enable these folks to work from home, whereas previously, that would never even been considered. And India fell so quickly. I mean, it was literally over 48 hours. They went to a national lockdown that was very strict. I mean, we couldn't even have people drive across town to go pick up a laptop in the office. We had one guy get his car impounded by the authorities because he was on the road. Yeah, it was really, really tough.
Wow, that's crazy. So, will you be switching back to a conventional work from the office or a hybrid type thing, or what are you looking at after the pandemic?
It'll be hybrid. We don't quite know what it's going to look like, but we definitely know it will be hybrid. I think we have to figure out kind of what that new way of working will be, and I'm thankful to have some really impressive colleagues here at the bank who have a lot of experience in that. But a lot of options. I think that it's also opening up some interesting things in terms of recruiting. So if we are a little bit more flexible than we used to be, then maybe we're not just looking in a few metro areas, and we can really open up in terms of what we think, where we can get talent from.
That's been one of the things that's really opened up for my company as an IT staffing company, is talking to managers who are like, oh no, I have to have somebody here on site. They have to be in front of me. We have to be in meetings every day. And I was like, well, you can get a lot of great people not working in front of you if you would, and you can also get them cheaper,
Right.
And a lot of people just wouldn't go for it. And this guy actually kind of forced their hands, because I did a blog about 6 months before the whole COVID thing hit that said by 2024, over 50% of the workforce was going to be working remote at least part of the time. Right. And this whole pandemic that we're going through right now, has just kind of forced it and made everybody see, just like you said, that yes, they can work remote. They can be just as, if not more productive and happier, because they're not stuck in Bay Area traffic or whatever for, 2 or 3 hours of their day, so they get to spend more time with their family. So then we just have to figure out other things like not having burnout because they're working all the time because they are at home. So, as many good things and bad things come of it, there's little intricacies that have to be worked out. So I talked with the CIO from Police Credit Union a couple weeks back, and he talked a lot about digital transformation. What's going on right now as far as your initiatives around digital transformation?
Yeah, well, I think I'd be shocked if any industry, but of course, financial services, where, we've been talking about a digital transformation for years. And so I think it's a matter of what does that mean for you? and your company, and what is your velocity of change. And so for us, promoting things like mobile banking, remote deposit captures, obviously payments, these type of things have always been important. But I think what we saw in COVID, the first 3 months or so, that we probably accelerated our digital and digitization efforts 3 years over a 3 month period of time.
Right.
Both because we had to, we had to declare war on paper. We had to get paper out of our processes because people weren't in an office. And our clients' behavior shift. All of a sudden, the 85-year-old grandmother now needs to figure out how to use remote deposit capture. And so yeah, that's been really cool to see that happen. And so for us, I also think there's this notion of digital plus human. So how can we not lose the fact that we have really talented bankers who have personal relationships with clients and use digital to enable them as well in how they serve our customers?
Yeah, well, just when I was writing all this stuff to prepare for it, it's like thinking back just a few years on the things I used to do to bank compared to what I do now. I mean, it's just like, it's a whole different world. So my next question is, do you see in the near future an end to cash?
That's an interesting question. People talk about that a lot. Americans love cash.
Oh yeah, I do too. I got a pocket full of it right now for no reason.
So yeah, I just for that simple reason, I think no. I do think that certain we do see some countries moving more and more there. You could envision a time where a government actually forbids cash, and for a number of reasons, including black market or corruption and things like that. So we'll continue to move towards a less cash world, but in the short run, Americans still like the greenback.
What are your top priorities for this year in the time of COVID? I mean, both for your customers and for employees.
Yeah, it starts with people. So that's always at the top of the list, our people. And, how are we taking care of our existing team members? How are we recruiting game-changing talent? We've created in the last couple of years pretty big relationships with universities, including Arizona State. And so that we'll have, I think, 50 interns coming in here in the spring. And like last year, it will be all remote. So that takes some coordination and thinking through. So, first and foremost, people and culture and just how we're continuing to transform there. Beyond that, we do have an IT strategy. I presented it for the third time last week to the board. And so there's a number of components there, whether it's moving to the cloud, accelerating on our data journey, digital, as we just said, what we're doing within the digital space, and how are we transforming those customer journeys with our digital work, and really just our general movement to agile and DevOps, and in terms of how we actually, how do we deliver this way? So those are really top of mind for me. We last year, as you may know, the Paycheck Protection Program was a huge win for not only our bank, but also for the IT team. We were able to build a solution in 36 hours, literally 36 hours, that was client facing. Again, really motivated team. We were running 4-hour sprints instead of 2-week sprints. Through that work, we were able to issue loans to about, I think, 17,000 clients that we think in doing that saved about 300,000 jobs in our communities here. The second round of PPP is just launched. Our teams, we knew it was coming before the holidays. They worked over the holidays. Again, we were one of the first banks to open up this time around ahead of the big banks. And it's a much improved client experience as well. And so just really excited that we're at the forefront there of change and helping the community as well.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that a big part of Bank of the West is that community feel. Out here in Brentwood, where our office is at, I was in the Rotary Club with a lady named Lori Avon, and she runs the Bank of the West branch out here. I mean, just the feel of the community is something that's very important. And going back to what you were talking about with the interns there from ASU, I know that the campus there is right down the street from ASU. And I watched, I think it was about a year ago, one of your posts on Facebook talking about that program. It's just a great program.
Right.
And that's something that's great for the community and for the bank.
That's right.
So speaking of great for the community, I watched a video about a kid named Daniel Vasquez. And it was for Year Up Bay Area. Great organization. That was a great video. Can you tell me and us a bit more about Year Up?
I'd love to. Year Up is it's a program, nonprofit, that takes young adults. So think of people who've graduated from high school but don't have a college degree. Somewhere between 18 and 25 years old, really important time in someone's life, and get them into a year-long program where they'll spend the first 6 months in a classroom, pre-COVID, in a classroom. And that classroom time is really focused on two things. One would be tech skills, or whatever track you're going down. Some might be more project management, but generally tech skills. So really important and valuable skills to have. The other, though, which is kind of the secret sauce of the organization, are soft skills. So they teach you how to shake hands. They teach you how to talk to someone in an office setting. And they teach you to dress very professionally. And so when you're done with the first 6 months of that program, you then get placed in an internship with a corporate partner, like a Bank of the West. But now there's many, and I'm so thrilled to see a lot of the big tech firms in as well. Facebook being one of the prominent ones. But we have hospitals, we have, you name it, types of firms, big and small, here now taking interns. And I like to think of it more as an apprenticeship than an internship, because it's 6 months. And most of these young adults at the end of that internship would love to stay on as a full-time employee. And so, and so that's unlike a more traditional college internship where the student goes back after 2 months back to college. And so through this, a lot of it's really changing the professional arc of a lot of these young adults, getting them the skills they need, getting them the connections they need. They get mentorships with people as well. And these young adults they're extremely bright. They're extremely motivated. And so, these are people who just did not have the opportunity. And so it's just amazing to see that untapped potential, unleashed in corporate America. This was something that I was thinking about before I even heard about Year Up. Being a manager in IT, I saw we had literally have to search the world to find talent to fill some of our roles. And I was thinking, what happened to some of the folks that I grew up with? What about people here from Bay Area? There's something missing. There's a gap here. This is the tech hub of the world, and we should, the people that are growing up here should be able to benefit from that. And so when I heard about Year Up, I thought, oh, that's definitely along the lines of what I've been thinking about. And I just looked up the director's email, sent him an email. He said, "Come on in." We chatted for an hour, and kind of the rest has been history.
That is so cool. I mean, a lot of people just need an opportunity. It's like the interesting part about what you just said is learning how to shake a hand, learning how to have a conversation. In today's world, there's so many people who are so uncomfortable with just doing those things that you or it was a norm, coming out of the 80s and 90s. And then as we get farther into this non-touch electronic world, that your kids and my kid is growing up in, a lot of kids are a little bit different today, where they're more to themselves. They stay into their games, whatever it is. So some people just need that extra little touch.
Well, they do such a good job with this that I'd say, the Year Up interns and employees that we have, they could teach many of the rest of the folks we have some soft skills as well. They really do a nice job. It is the secret sauce they have.
Well, where can people find it on the internet to go out and look up Year Up?
Yeah, yearup.org. And there's chapters around the U.S.
Okay.
I've lost count of the number, but here on the West Coast, we have Seattle. The Bay Area has a number. There's a site now at DVC in the East Bay, San Jose. Facebook, they have one on their campus. So they have 80 people going through who would just do internships on Facebook. And they're only targeting the area that Facebook is in, that kind of Menlo Park, Redwood City, Palo Alto, East Palo Alto area. So they're only drawing young adults from that area, which is really impressive. We have San Francisco, Los Angeles, and actually in Phoenix. So that's been a huge lift for me, because I can also participate and get interns in our Tempe office as well.
That's so awesome. So my next question is really about Bank of the West has a female CEO. Over 40% of your executives are female. I know that diversity is an important part of Bank of the West. How do you align culture with strategy?
Well, what's the famous saying? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, I mean, that is so true. And, as you mentioned, our CEO, Nandita Bakshi, has an amazing story. Not only is she a female, but also was not born in this country, started her banking career as a teller, and just has an amazing story and journey. And so I think, to your point, it starts at the top. She sets an amazing tone for us. And it's just been a great experience for me to really watch how she really steers the ship.
What are your hobbies outside of work? Do you still play baseball?
I was playing a little softball when I could, but I stopped because I was traveling so much that I just felt bad. I couldn't commit to the team, like I wanted to. I started playing golf about 10 years ago, and was something that I started in the first kind of financial crisis when kind of the job situation was a little weird, and I thought, let me just do something fun here. And that gave me something to do with my dad. My dad's been playing golf his whole life. And so that was good, but I could never play consistently, let alone practice. And so what's been truly another silver lining here with COVID is I've been able to play now once a week, and so that's been fun. I've been able to play much more, get out, and just and even in this COVID time, it's kind of the only thing that feels somewhat normal. You can get out and just be on the course and socialize with people, whether you know them or not. Obviously, it's easy to be socially distanced in the game of golf. So that, I wouldn't say before this, I didn't have a huge hobby, but definitely golf has been big for me in COVID. We talked a little bit about music. I did in COVID buy one of these new DJ kits. So I've been able to play around with that as well, and I got all my old MP3s out and got them loaded up. So that's been fun as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I get out. My wife and I belong to a golf course out here, Discovery Bay, and she gets out there a couple times a week. I just go out every once in a while on a weekend or something because it's one of those things where if I've got work on the mind, I can't hit the ball worth of crap. And but if I get out there, if I can break 90, I'm a happy camper, and
that's same with me. Yeah. One rule I have is I will not look at my phone on the course for that same reason, because you see an email that you don't want to see and then your mind's somewhere else. So it can wait a couple hours.
Yeah. So then I hit the ball and it goes even farther to the right. Can you recall, I think you've talked about a couple of them, but can you recall a defining event or a turning point in your life that led you to where you are today?
I'm not sure there's a defining point. I've had a number of kind of really impactful events, including, I talked about working for NextCard. I talked about working for Washington Mutual. Those were both banks that failed. And so I don't know if too many people can say they've worked for two banks that have actually failed. You learn a lot through that experience. And, at the time, going through the first banking crisis, having a 2-year-old and a mortgage myself was pretty stressful. And then, kind of all leading up to even this past year with COVID and everything that's taught us. And I'm sure things that we don't even know we've learned or when we look back on this, what we'll think of it. But yeah, I think back to my relationship with my family, the team sports I played, that pivotal moment when I figured out I actually wasn't smart and I just had to work my butt off. It was things like that. Dropping out of law school was a huge moment to say, okay, well, I gotta do something different here, and I gotta figure it out. So I think there was just an element of it's not confidence as much as just you got to persevere. And when I got the CIO job 3 years ago, that was a big step up. I mean, I was playing in a big role, but to go from the role I was in to being the CIO was a big step. And so I remember the first 6 months, it is literally drinking from a fire hose. When I think back to, in the prior role, you might have a couple meetings a week that were really big meetings, where you're talking to a regulator or you're talking to your CEO, and you'd know those two meetings, you'd be planning for those two meetings. I have 8 hours of those meetings a day now. And so there's also an element of just, you're not going to be able to plan that much. You gotta be able to kind of roll with things, and trust the people who are working for you as well. So that's been a big learning moment for me.
Yeah. Hire great people, think on your feet. Those are pretty big things to learn. And it takes a long time to get there. They don't just happen overnight. I was just thinking while you were talking, and I've talked to a couple different people. A couple have actually been on the podcast that used to work for you. And I always heard that you're a very even keel person. What really gets you pissed off?
That's a good question. What does? Probably just very small things or simple things, and usually, and the even keel is probably just more of what they see, and not what's going on in my head. Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't like it when people are rude or demeaning. I have no patience for that. I don't really like it when people are BSing. That is also not something that I take lightly. You don't know something, that's all good. Just say it.
Right.
But BS is really not something that I like. Probably the moment I get the most frustrated is trying to get my 13-year-old to do her math homework.
Well, I'm right there with you on the little things. And one of the little things is a little white ball that I hit on a golf course. And mostly what it is it's sometimes my own. I'm the one who really makes me mad most of the time. And even when it's somebody else who's doing something, it still somehow comes back to me. So I appreciate your candid answer. So the last thing I'm going to ask you, two things actually. What's one of the last books that you read that you would suggest as a must read to all the rest of us?
Oh gosh. I just read, me and my team, we read, I think it's called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. It's about OKRs, objectives and key results. And it's not some exotic, novel, but it's a really interesting read, and a lot of focus on how OKRs help change, Google, how Intel used them, and a number of organizations, many organizations use them today, and they line up very well with an agile at scale kind of delivery. They work very well for me because the key results are all things that you can measure, so it's very data driven. So that was cool. I also read a book called White Fragility. And that's a really interesting book, especially after last year and what really happened after George Floyd events. So I really recommend that for people to read.
Perfect. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm going to ask you the last question. It's the same question I ask everybody at the end of the True Ambition podcast. So my background is I've been sober about 6.5 years. Finally got out of that thing, my drinking problem. And one of the quotes that I found in one of the books from my 12-step program was, true ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is the profound desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. When I read that 5 or so plus years ago, it really kind of changed my perspective because I've always been very ambitious. Most of the people I talk to are. And what I found is that my ambition changed. And instead of serving myself, I started trying to serve other people. So my question at the end is always, what is your true ambition in your personal life and in your career moving forward?
Yeah, well, that is a profound thing to think about. I think in terms of work, career, what I've really enjoyed as being a CIO, being at that level, is helping others, is having the platform to do that, and whether it's trying to think about diversity and inclusion, or just helping your teams deliver. And we talk about some of our delivery teams. They create magic dust. They create this magic. I don't do that. What they come to me for is when they're stuck in goo, and so my job is to get them unstuck. And I really enjoy that, and being able to do that kind of at scale. And similar to what I've been trying to do with Europe. And more recently, I've been introduced to a couple of other organizations. One's called Smash, another's called Genesis Works. They do very similar things, but they actually start in the high school with folks. And I think personally, it's just about what good can I do, and that's actually something I've started asking myself over the last year. In the morning, it's like, well, what good can I do today? And at the end of the day, what good did I do today? And just that simple. And I think, it's usually that doesn't involve yourself, as you mentioned. And it usually involves trying to help others, and just be a decent human on this planet.
Awesome. Well, I love it. You and I start and end our day pretty much the same way. And the funny part is when we do that kind of thing and help somebody else out, we usually are helping ourselves without even knowing it. So I really appreciate you being here today, Jacob. And I look forward to meeting you again when all this pandemic stuff is over, and maybe we'll go out and hit the golf links.
Sounds good. And thank you, John. This has been fun, and it's been a great experience, and have a great weekend.
Sounds good. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the True Ambition Podcast. We'll see you next time.
The True Ambition Podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.